Hi, everyone. I'm Kyler from the Content Mix. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Hayley Collingswood, Group Head of Marketing at Ventur. After completing a bachelor's degree in graphic communication and design from the University of Leeds in the UK, Hayley set out to disrupt the world of marketing. From working as an account manager for agencies such as Turnkey to her current role at Ventur, Hayley's diverse career journey has given her the opportunity to explore the world of marketing and brand management, catapulting her career and allowing her to excel in her craft. Now she works at Ventur, a travel management brand that promises its customers a seamless and exceptional travel experience, something we're all looking forward to as the world slowly opens up again. So let's get the ball rolling and welcome Hayley to the show. So thank you so much for joining us today, Hayley.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So just to get started, can you introduce yourself in your own words? I just gave you that nice introduction, but it'd be great to hear from you, to hear more about where you're from and what's your connection to marketing in Europe and in the UK.
Yeah, so I guess I've always worked in the UK. Obviously, I went to university here and kind of got straight into the industry from there. I suppose my background is that I started in design, so I really kind of had a passion for that starting early on. And then as I left university, I sort of wanted to get more into the strategic side of things. And so now when I look at myself, I sort of see myself as a bit of a brand advocate, somebody who really believes in the power of branding, and that's something that I take through in my entire career, but also all my roles at the moment.
Was that something you expected to get involved in when you graduated, or kind of life took you in certain directions?
I think it just sort of happened, if I'm honest. I suppose the reason I wanted to go into design is because I used to love reading magazines, which sounds a bit weird now in the digital age. But yeah, when I was growing up as a teenager, I just loved all the glossy adverts and that kind of thing. And I was like, God, I want to be involved in that. I want to be in art direction and design. And that's what led me to do that at university. Mm-hmm. But then I did a year in industry during university, and I was like, do you know what? I'm not getting involved in the really interesting kind of strategic stuff. And I want to get to the heart of the why and the how am I going to tackle this challenge and that kind of thing, which I think you get a lot of at university. But actually, when you go into the real world as a junior designer, you don't get into that kind of stuff.
No.
So that's why when I left, I was like, well, actually, I want to be on the account management side because they're going to all the interesting meetings and getting to make all the cool decisions. So I was just like, yeah, I want to do that. And I guess naturally I ended up going in-house and working on big brand projects for the brands themselves rather than multiple brands at one time.
So cool. And it's really interesting to see. I feel like a lot of times when we're looking at a magazine, no one's really thinking about I want to make that campaign, or why is that the way it is? We kind of just consume it. So it's really cool how a passion that you had kind of has driven throughout your career. And I think a lot of times too, when we graduate, we're always we have to do what we graduate, our degree is what at least in Europe, that's kind of the mindset, at least in Southern Europe. And then coming from the US, and I'm sure in the UK, it's not always like that. They always say I studied Spanish and history. It doesn't mean I went into marketing and sales, and here we are. So it's kind of nice to see kind of how your passion has pushed you throughout your career. Now, so you've been quoted as someone whose ethos hinges on the power of brand, creating affinity that goes far beyond product and price. So for you, what does that mean?
Yeah, I just think there's such a big problem these days. People just get, wrapped up in the sell, and how can we get these conversions and that kind of thing. And they lose sight of the fact that actually, if your brand isn't right, if your customer has no affinity to your brand and has no other reason to want to buy from you, then you're on the back foot hugely. And you might get some sales, but if you actually take the time to sort out your brand first, it can really amplify all the other activity that you're doing and really make it all sort of come together much more nicely. And I suppose for us, and I'm just thinking particularly about where I am at the minute at Ventur, we were in a situation where we had a brand that it was attracting completely the wrong audience, not the audience that we wanted really moving forward. So it really was an opportunity to completely change the positioning of the brand to really kind of cherry pick the clients that we have that, we really, really value, but grow that instead of ending up with the clientele that isn't actually quite right for our business and that would be better served by another brand. So it really what I find so interesting about brand is it is such a huge part of an entire business and an entire strategy. And I think, you sort of forget it at your peril, really.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like that kind of, I don't know, your mindset towards branding is that like you have to grow it and let it happen organically. And I think that's something that kind of we can apply across the board, whether it comes to like SEO, for example. I feel like people want SEO and blog posts and they want results right away, but it's like, no, you have to build that up and let it happen. Or like when trying to like get a new client, it's kind of, you can say no to a client. You don't have to say yes to everything, so that you're working with people that will be beneficial in the long term. I think that's something that we can apply right to like our mindset nowadays, where we have like social media and everything's so fast, and you have Amazon and everything's like instantaneous. But we actually have to take the time to build and grow internally before like sharing that with the world. I think that's really, really cool. That's your approach to.
Yeah, and I mean, it
branding.
like completely shapes the quality as well of what you get. Like, for example, we're working on PPC at the minute, and it's so important to us that we're presenting ourselves as the brand that we want to be, and that a lot of our activity at the minute is about building up the profile of the brand and sort of saying to the world, hey, we're different from everyone else, because we don't want to get any old PPC leads. It's important that they're of value to us, and so it all flows through right down to the super tactical stuff. But if your brand's right, you know what you're doing all the way through.
Exactly.
Rather than making it up as you go along.
Yeah, if you have a solid brand too, you know what you're talking about, and everyone in the company will be on the same page as well. Whether they're in sales or in marketing or any other department, they're going to know how to represent the brand in a very easy way. And that's why it's good to actually take the time to create that brand and that image as well. Now, as you mentioned before, too, like throughout your career, you've been involved in design and marketing and account management at various companies. And that was like one thing that really stuck out and made me excited to talk to you, because you have all these different, I don't know, you've been involved in different things and kind of brought them all together, and you've worked in different industries and organizations. So have you found like having that diverse skill set and being exposed to many different things, you found that to be helpful for you in your career today, like now at Ventur?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as well as branding, I suppose something that's always been important to me has been really strong creative. And I think obviously having started in design and really sort of grown an appreciation for what that takes and how strong creative can be, both through university and through my placement year, and then moving into client services and working for multiple brands and working so closely with those designers to get to that sort of creative conclusion that really actually works and hits the nail on the head. Like I've been in the thick of it, and I completely understand now, when it comes to me briefing an agency or a creative team on what we're looking to achieve, I know what they need to know, and I can be articulate about that, and I'm confident in kind of, I suppose, like taking the project through to its final conclusion. And like you said earlier, like I'm not afraid to say no. Like we're not there yet. We're not hitting the nail on the head. And I think that takes courage in itself.
It really does.
And confidence in your own beliefs about what creative should be and how strong it should be.
And it gives you like a sort of kind of type of empathy, no? Like you can, if you're like working with graphic designers, like what it's like, so you can sympathize with them. It's like, I feel like sometimes if you have like you're working with an agency, and then that client for the agency has no idea how it works, and they're being very demanding, and they can talk to you and feel comfortable with you being like, she knows what's going on and she can sympathize with us in a way. So it's really cool. It helps with management.
Definitely. I think that helps, like having that understanding, and it does help you to build a bit more of a rapport, because you're showing that you understand what it takes. But in the same way, like that, it is important to say, look, I completely get it. We're just not there yet. Like, put the cards out on the table. Don't try and second guess what the solution is. Just say, this is the situation. It's not quite working yet, but if we all pull together, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's make it happen. And it's about seeing, I hate the whole idea about, it being us and them, like client and agency and that kind of thing. And I think actually it's so much more productive if you can create that sort of mindset that you are all actually one team. And, it's not, you guys go away and come back with something else. I think it's collaborative. And the more that I can give and we can give, my team can give to them, the better result we're going to get together.
Exactly. And that makes, because I work at an agency, so we've had many issues with that before when they don't understand, or it's us and them. And I think now that I'm like working in the sales side of things for the same agency, I really try to push that with the client. And from the beginning, it's like, we want to be part of your team. Like, we are an extension of your team because we are going to get your goal done together. Like, that's why you work with the agency, to help you achieve the same goal. And if you do like that kind of collaboration, I think it's so important. Now, you mentioned, or you alluded to, this rebranding at Ventur that has been happening over the past year, and you were a critical part to its success. Could you share a bit more in general, I guess, about what Ventur does, what went into this successful brand launch activation, and maybe kind of what the brand was before and what it is now?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So actually Ventur's not been the name for that long. We did change the name when we rebranded it too. So we were called Travel Leads before, which the name, to be honest, we just found it didn't work. It created a lot of confusion and issues, and we felt like we could come up with something much stronger. So Travel Leads has sort of, I guess, three main prongs to the business. So the first is like business travel. So we work with some really huge brands doing all their travel, getting them all across the world, no matter where they need to be. And that's for a lot of our clients as well. That's been throughout the pandemic as well, because they've been essential workers.
Right.
So they've been traveling all over. So you can imagine the complications in trying to get people back from.
I bet. I was going to say, how was that? It must have been crazy.
There's been a few stories of, trying to get one person from A to B, and they've had to go via like 6 different countries to get back. Yeah, that was like early days. Obviously it's got better now, but our team are very, very skilled at what they do. And a big part of the brand is the consultancy and the advice. And it's not a self-serve digital model. Like, that's not who we are. It is about that kind of personal consultancy with what they need and offering that added value. So yeah, we have the business side, and then we also do professional sports travel. So we do a lot of our national teams, and we do the England cricket team and things like that. So we're flying them all over the world all the time.
And you're organizing like every aspect of that trip, right? From the accommodation to the flights to the transport, everything.
Absolutely. And also it's like all the equipment you don't appreciate, all the baggage, and like negotiating with the airlines about how we're going to get it there. Sometimes we need to do charter flights for teams, sometimes not. We literally, to the detail of like, if we order this coach, will it fit through the stadium when they get there? Like, we've got to make sure everything is perfect, because at the end of the day, for those athletes, like, they didn't want to be thinking, about the. They just want to get there and be in the mindset to be ready to perform and to do their job. And again, that's a big part of what we try to do at Ventur, is we're sort of making the whole process seamless and effortless for you, so that you can focus on your job and you're not getting caught up in the things that actually you can just let us handle that. And that's where the consultancy comes in, because it's like we're actually trusted to deliver that, rather than it just being sort of left to happen.
Now, that's really cool and interesting. You don't think about these things, right? When a person books their own trip, they're just like, okay, I just need the flight, the accommodation, and we'll figure it out. But you're thinking about every little detail, which is cool. So I guess, how did that, like, okay, you're rebranding the company and kind of, I guess, repositioning it in a different way. So how did that kind of go into like the brand activation and your whole plan, I guess, for that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing we really wanted to do was do the research and get the insight about who we were, what we were delivering for our customers, and where the opportunity was in the market. And I suppose travel management, it's been quite a corporate, dated market in general, and certainly like our old brand was definitely in keeping with that. And so we felt like there was a real opportunity to do something different. And when we did the research, what we found was that we were already delivering this really high value service, the consultancy and everything that we've just talked about. We were already delivering that, but we just weren't attracting the customers but we do, we have some fantastic customers too, but we in terms of new business, we weren't attracting customers that really appreciated that. And so that was something that we wanted to grow moving forward. And so doing this rebrand and repositioning was all about becoming that premium brand that we weren't selling ourselves as, but that we were delivering for our customers.
Mm.
I guess in a way we really wanted to reflect that kind of premium customer that we're going after in what we were developing from a branding perspective, in that you will go to a specific shop and specific brand that you like because you almost see yourself in that brand.
Right.
And I know certainly working in marketing, like I will choose a brand based on how it looks, like whether it feels like me or not, like on the surface. So it was all about that.
Now, I guess like what other factors, like you changed the name of the company, I'm sure like the image and stuff like that, but what other things have you done to kind of present this image to the world in the way that you want?
Yeah, so obviously rebranding in the pandemic has been complicated.
I bet, yeah.
To say the least. But I'd say what our focus has mainly has been about building up this brand profile and sort of saying to the world, we're different and this is why. And so I guess this all kind of fits into the entire positioning of the brand. So when we launched, we're like, what we're going to do that's going to, actually our target right now is not necessarily to get tons of new customers, because that's not the landscape we're living in. So let's build up this brand to be recognized as something that we're different from where we were before. So for example, the podcast that we've just launched, Venture Further, it's not a travel podcast. It's not just talking about issues in travel. It's about growth and mindset and motivations and success. And we're speaking to people from, yes, the world of sport and the world of business, but also like from all different areas, like motivation coaches and things like that. So we've got some really big names on there, and it's almost like this. It's just like having a bit of a chat with really interesting characters and saying like, we're a travel partner that actually offers you something extra
added value. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, I was going to mention that because you're working in the podcast, which, as I know, we're on this podcast that I work on, and it's a lot of work. So I kind of wanted to know like what your role in the podcast is and how that experience has been so far. How do you find your guests? And I guess we already talked about it before, but kind of why is the show critical to Ventur?
Yeah, so I'm very much in the coordination. I'm not the host.
Which is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, so we have a fantastic host, Peter Wilcock, who actually is involved at Venture and has had his own podcast before. So he was the perfect candidate. So we just get in touch with whether it's via our customers or other connections we have in the industry. So again, Venture is about sort of building that network and like... Right. Having a bit of a community around us. So that's how we're sourcing our guests. And then obviously it's just the production of it, as you well know, like takes a lot of time. And then getting it out there, promoting it, obviously liaising with guests to kind of help amplify the message further as well. And yeah, so it's been a really interesting project. I've never worked on a podcast before. It's definitely a first. I suppose it's very 2020.
Yeah, very 2020. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is really, really fun. And you know what? We speak to such diverse people. It is such a fascinating project to work on, and so different to sort of, I guess, your more typical marketing channels that it's been a pleasure to be part of it.
That's so cool. And how, if people wanted to listen to the podcast, I think it launched this month, right? But there's episodes available already. So if they wanted to listen, where could we find it?
Yeah, so we've got it on the website at venture.partners/podcast, or it's also on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the usual places.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to check it out before. I wanted to before the interview, but time got away. So I'm definitely going to listen to it, because I've been trying to listen to more podcasts in general, just to get a better idea of what's out there and kind of hear what other people do. So I'm definitely going to tune in, and that's really exciting as well. And I like the idea of building community. I feel like that's what we try to do as well at the Content Mix. It's not just about the podcast or marketing. It's more about building a community, getting that network, and just bringing people together. Like I got a job through the Content Mix. Like that's kind of 3 years ago. It changed my career and my life. So I think if we can bring more people together, it's going to give more opportunities for those. So it's really nice to hear that not only is it about Venture, but it's about mindset and mindfulness and kind of how to be a better professional and better person, which I think is really cool. Now, from the background that you have in the video, for those who are watching the video, I think you're home. So I kind of wanted to know more about like working in the pandemic. What has that meant for Ventur, and what like your typical day for you like at work is like now?
I suppose in the pandemic, there is no typical day.
That's very true.
Yeah, it seems to be changing. And definitely we're seeing a shift. Like I've talked a lot about how we've been very focused on the brand and sort of building that new positioning for ourselves. But actually at the minute, we are now starting to see the shift more into like the tactical marketing. We're starting to see things come back here in the UK. We're starting to see travel come back, a bit more confidence in the industry, and things are really starting to pick up again. So obviously that opens up a whole new world of opportunities for us compared to what we've had for the last 18 months. I suppose travel's been one of the hardest hit areas. So it's been a lot of pivoting, the word of the pandemic, like trying to keep up with what's going on. But yeah, so we're excited to sort of get our teeth into it. And obviously we've been very busy anyway, doing all the brand work, which it's actually nice to have a bit of space, a bit of headspace to like focus on that and not also be trying to deliver like tons of day-to-day stuff alongside it. But yeah, I've been at home throughout the pandemic, and I think that's something we're going to see more flexibility on in our workplace. I think it will vary from team to team for us and dependent on what people are looking for as well. But it's certainly something that I've appreciated. And I think having more time, personal time, I've got a dog that I like to be able to walk myself now rather than having to pay someone to come in.
That's really nice.
So it makes a big difference, I think. It's not for everyone, but
definitely not. But it gives a good balance as well. Now, and I have to ask, have you traveled in the pandemic? Just, random question, but how was that experience?
Yeah, I have actually. We were fortunate enough to get away to Italy last September.
Nice.
I've not been away this year, but went to Italy last September. We went to Venice and then to a little country place just outside Verona. I have to say, what a perfect time to visit Venice. Like,
there's nobody there, right?
Nobody there. Yeah.
It's just a totally different experience. Yeah. I've been normally, and it's like, kind of not like, I hate to say this, like a theme park, but kind of, it's just so many people, you can't even experience the city.
Yeah, you can't enjoy it. And it is all like narrow streets and stuff. So I imagine you kind of just get like
shoved in there,
shuffled along by the people behind you.
I'm so jealous. Yeah, it's such a beautiful place.
And I know a few people that went to Rome as well last September and just said it was incredible. And I had a similar experience to you had in Venice when I went to Rome.
Yeah,
and I was just,
a lot of people.
Oh no, I can imagine it was absolutely amazing to go when it was a bit quieter. And obviously things were a bit strange last year, and travel wasn't right for everyone at that point in time. No. But for me, I just love to travel. It's a big part of enjoyment. And I did go. I don't know if you're familiar with Cornwall in the southwest of the UK. Yeah, we went there earlier in the year, and it rained.
That's nice. Oh no.
It rained the whole time.
Oh no.
So yeah, when you live in England, you're quite keen to go somewhere without rain.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So it's good that you got to travel though, and then kind of at least change of scenery, whether it's Cornwall or in Venice. So now I guess going back to marketing, I need to ask you a kind of devil's advocate question about like, what do you think companies get wrong when it comes to marketing? Like someone with your experience, you've kind of been in different organizations. What have you seen? It's been like a red flag for you, or something that you think people could improve?
I think it's just being too safe and not challenging the status quo, to be honest. I think I have been very fortunate, but I always try and work for brands that are trying to do something different and, want to say something about themselves. And I think a lot of brands, particularly it tends to be the bigger brands, they tend to forget that they actually still need to fight for their market share, and they actually need to mean something to their customers. And I think they don't sort of analyze that enough, or when they do, they sort of think, oh, but that would be risky, or and then don't have the courage to actually go ahead with something or try something. And I suppose on the same line as that, I think, sometimes you do need to fail, but if you try and fail, you learn.
Exactly.
obviously not irreversible things, but it is part of it, especially in marketing. You don't always know if something's going to work, if it's a completely new strategy that you've not tried before in that business. You go off on your gut, don't you, and what you've seen work elsewhere, and then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but the important thing is that you learn and grow from it.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like, I guess, like a thread or two threads to this conversation has been patience, like having patience and kind of letting things happen organically, and also just like taking a risk. But do you have any other skills that you think are important for marketers to have nowadays?
I think generally just being able to, I guess, perception, being able to look at a situation and not just like look at what you think it might be saying, but actually to take in all the information and to really understand the various layers to that and use that to build a strategy moving forward. I think strategy in general, to be honest, gets left a lot, and sometimes it's not helped by, CEOs and boards just saying, do this, do that, do the other, and people end up responding all the time. I think actually being in a company and being in the position where marketing can define their own goals, their own strategy, their own objectives is the way to create something that's much stronger.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice. Now, speaking of advice, I always say, like, on like the show, we have, guests who are, whether they're just kind of like new to the industry or like very experienced, but we also, our audience is kind of a big, and I kind of want it that way. I want people to, listen who are super experienced, but also people who are just starting out. And I think we were talking before about you graduating from university and kind of where your life has taken you. And I guess maybe what would you tell to somebody now who's just starting out, or what would you tell Hayley when she graduated from university, like that you wished you kind of knew then that you know now?
I think it would be to find what you love, and I think I don't know if it's the same way you are, but over here I so often see people recruiting for marketing managers, and they just do a bit of everything, and I just think, well, no, like, it's good to have passion, it's good to have something, and it doesn't have to be a tiny little part of marketing, but it's good to have something that really inspires you and that you want to be involved in. Obviously for me, that's branding and brand building, and that's what I love. So I think in those early days, it's like, get that exposure, like, and then be confident enough to say, actually, yes, I'm doing this at the minute, but I want to be over there doing that. I think that's something that I'd say. And also just to like value your own time, like, don't, especially in agency, I think it can be really easy to, get worked into the ground and feel like you've got to prove yourself. And one thing I'd say is, you don't have to. And actually, we work in a creative industry where, we're not going to be creative if we're completely flat and we've got no energy. And actually, we're probably most creative when we're not working and we think, oh, do that for that project that I was working on. Like, so taking that time away, I think is really important.
It's important, like mental health and just taking a break. And also, it's interesting what you said, the first piece of advice, because I think the episode that's right before this one, we were talking about the same thing, about how we kind of grew, like, we were raised to be like, we have to be so multifaceted and do all these different things and then not focus on one thing that could be our passion. So I think that's very much like a really good piece of advice, because I think now, I compared it to like YouTube influencers. Like, there's so many of them now and they try to do so many things. And it's like, to really like stand out, and people are going to want to watch you if you're passionate about one specific thing, like that makes you happy and you can share that with the world. And I think that's so, we can apply that to our jobs in marketing, for example.
Yeah.
You need to focus on things.
Sorry, just to like, be able to recognize that, like, I have an understanding of like many areas of marketing, not all of them, but I won't try and do them all. I'll say, do you know what, let's get an expert in to do this. Let's work with so-and-so to do that, because, I think having respect for everyone and their sort of focuses in their career is important, because at the end of the day, they'll do a much better job than you if it's not really what you do.
Exactly. And it's okay to say that you don't know. So even if you're like really far down in your career, like far along in your career, and there's an area that you have no idea, a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, I know it, and lie. And then it gets all, explodes and implodes on them. but it's okay to say, hey, I don't know, but I want to learn, or I want to bring in an expert so we can work together and I can learn from them. So I think that's a really good piece of advice you brought up. And like, I guess now we were talking before about like how it's important to step away from work and kind of so that you can get those creative juices flowing, but also for your mental health. And you also mentioned now that you work at home, you take the dog for a walk. So it's kind of wondering kind of what other daily habits that you have that you would attribute to your success.
Yeah, I think just taking that time to get into a different headspace. Like I really enjoy exercise, and I suppose not everyone does. And I find that quite relaxing in its own way. You know, sometimes it'll be yoga, sometimes it'll be, you know, going hell for leather on a spin class. And I think there's all different things that you can do as a bit of a release and just to take your mind somewhere else for that half an hour, however long it is, and just enjoy it. And I think being able to take the dog for a walk and, you know, on your lunch break and leave your work phone at home, I think is good. Like, you know, there's no point going for a walk, but walking around checking your emails the whole time and trying to respond and stuff. Like, I think when you're taking that time, take it consciously, you know, work hard when you're working. I find personally, it's not for everyone, but personally, I'm so productive if I am fixed about when I'm working, and then when I take a break, I properly take a break. And I do find I'm more creative that way.
So important, just disconnect sometimes too. And I agree with you. Like exercise is a great way of like, it's kind of like meditation in a way. Like you're not thinking about anything except what you're doing and maybe how you're dying in that spin class, but at least you're not thinking about work and stresses from home and all these different things. At least you're just focused on one thing and you don't realize it, but it's like a good way to clear your mind, at least like to start the day. I like to work out in the morning, so it's good to start the day that way. And I guess along the line, we're talking about recommendations, and I want to know if you have any recommendations when it comes to like apps or platforms or tools or any books, that anything that you think our audience could benefit from, whether it's marketing or personal.
Yeah, I mean, just generally, like, I love listening to podcasts, actually. I think that's kind of across different areas, and just in terms of my personal life as well. Like, for example, I love food and cooking and nutrition and that kind of thing. So I love to do that. I suppose more on the marketing front, again, very 2020, but I've been really enjoying a lot of the webinars that I've been seeing, and McCann have had a great series during the pandemic, the agency McCann, called Creative Courage. And I've attended a couple of those when I've been able to, and they've been amazing. And I attended one that had the head of brand from Weetabix on. And he was talking about the power of yes. And it was just really interesting to hear that kind of like mindset perspective on how we work in marketing and about how to foster like really strong creative ideas. Actually, instead of saying, no, that's not right, no, that's not right, no, that's not right, say, okay, well, yeah, I see what you're saying there, but how can we make it do this, 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 and this? And actually that creates so much more opportunity in terms of leadership as well, you know, and working with teams and things like that as well. And actually that's what builds really strong creative. And I suppose we've talked a lot in this podcast about creative courage. And I just think McCann really nailed it there with that series. So that's been great. And then also books, marketing books, I tend to not love loads because I find them quite cheesy. But there is one called Eating the Big Fish, and don't get me wrong, it's definitely cheesy. But if you can look past the cheese, I just think the ethos of the book is all about how, in order to stand out and create a successful brand, you've got to be something, you've got to do something. And like, if you think about, I guess, like Virgin Atlantic, for example, and what Richard Branson did with that airline decades and decades ago to become the number one from having like one plane that he was flying, you know, it really is that kind of mentality. And it's not just about the underdog either. This is what I was sort of saying earlier about big brands getting lazy. Like you almost need to think like an underdog all the time, even if you are the market leader. Otherwise, all of a sudden, you won't be. Exactly. And then you'll fight for it. So it's an interesting kind of book about how we all brands sort of have a place. And there's like certain personalities that kind of allow brands to succeed more than others.
That's awesome. I definitely need to check that book out, and I'll make sure I get past the cheesiness of it. But it seems like it has really good value as well. But unfortunately, we're getting to the end of our interview today. It's been awesome to speak with you and to learn more about like what drives you and kind of your passion and kind of your career and how your career has been driven by that passion to help brands rebuild. So I really appreciate your time today. And I'm sure our listeners will as well. But we had a lot of advice throughout the interview, but do you have any like final takeaways or like parting advice that you'd like to leave for our audience?
I think it's just having courage generally, both in terms of what you want to do and in terms of like helping to create something that's amazing. Like if you want to be part of that important process, it's important not to roll over. And I think that'll set you up in good stead for the rest of your career, really.
Yeah. Wow. Those are words to live by. So also, if people wanted to like follow you or like get in touch some way, is LinkedIn the best way? I don't know if you have any other platforms or channels.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best way. Just Hayley Collingswood. I'm one and only, so I'm not hard to.
That's good. I'm one and only too, Kyler Canastra. So we don't have, that's nice. It's really easy.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again, Hayley, so much for coming on the show today and sharing your insights. And I want to also thank everyone for listening in today. And as always, for more perspectives on content marketing industry in Europe or marketing in general in Europe, check out veracontent.com/mix and keep tuning into the podcast for more interviews with content experts. So we'll see you next time. Thanks, Hayley.
Thank you.